Adar, fabulous to see you again after
Hello.
so long.
Yes, pleasure to have you here.
And it's great to be back at this majestic boardroom. It looks like Serum has only been going from strength to strength since the last time I met you.
Yes, well, you know, from the last time we met, which was almost a decade ago.
Yes.
In 2011, I took over from my father as CEO. And, you know, now we've been exporting our products to 165 countries. And I've been focusing on launching new vaccines and building generally our overall capacity. So, you know, we're at about 1.4 billion doses a year that we produce between this campus and the new one that I'm going to take you to in a minute.
And globally as well, you have, you know, one of the strongest market shares. You're one of the top 5 players globally.
Yes,
now.
I mean, globally we have a 50 to 55% market share, which is remarkable for any Indian company. And so we're very proud of that. That's been after 50 years, you know, in 1966 is when my father founded the company and gave me this strong base to start with. And he actually in his days had to struggle a lot with financing and building his reputation. So I've had that head start as an advantage. So for me to grow in the last decade has been relatively easy compared to the struggles he went through. When he started in the 60s.
I think you've actually multiplied wealth here at Serum about 5 times in the last decade itself.
I don't know exactly how much, but
there are lots of numbers floating around, so
being a private limited company, you know, there isn't a lot of information in the public domain on the figures, but yes, we have grown fairly well. In some years, we've grown 30–40%. Some years, we've stayed at 5 or 10%.
Right.
But it's not just about that. We focused on making lives better, as we talked about earlier. Protecting children's lives has its own sort of satisfaction to it, you know. And of course, in our foundation, we've been providing clean drinking water and sanitation and processing the waste in the city. So my focus has been to improve the quality of life. We're obsessed today with economic growth in our country and, you know, what is the growth figure. But I feel we should also be equally focused on improving the quality of life and the environment around us. Because, you know, even if our growth was 9–10%, what's the sense of it? Even if everyone has a job, but if the quality of life today compared to the average European or someone living in the States is still far better. You know, if you look at public transport, toilets, traffic,
absolutely.
everything.
And as a group, I think you've been very instrumental in making sure that there are initiatives taken across all of these parameters. I mean, we can see that here, you know, where we are on the Poonawalla farms and the SEZ and the kind of expanse and the kind of difference you see the minute you walk in here. So, you know, there's obviously been an emphasis on that and also on creating jobs. You've also been, you know, really pushing the agenda there, talking about how there's a need to upskill, to create a better working environment here.
I think, you know, we've talked about what the government can do. I think as far as ease of doing business is concerned, if we get rid of half the permissions and licenses that exist, where actually no checking is happening, you're only going to bureaucrats and then the file moves from one side to the other. If we can look into that a little bit more than what the Modi government has already done a good job on, then we'll create that many more jobs faster. You know, you'll have all these new factories, permissions, so many, even startups thriving so much faster. And that will automatically spur the growth that we're talking about, because I don't see any other measure, of course, apart from the courts. If we decongest the courts and have a system to actually hear and dispose of cases, then, you know, you've got a lot of relief that will come, whether it's to farmers, rape victims, businesses, startups. So these two factors, if you look at, can certainly give us the growth that we've been talking about.
Rahul Bajaj recently at the ET Awards made a comment saying that there was an atmosphere of fear for the business community under this government. Do you agree with that?
I mean, you look, there was that sort of feeling, but we never had that feeling. And many people that I spoke with also, I think the fear was there, and rightly so, for people who are doing wrong things. Whether it's duping your investors or bankers, those people, and rightly so, should be afraid of retribution and justice. But I think people like the Bajaj Group and so many other good groups who are ethical in their business practices, have nothing really to fear.
Right.
I think when I was at least having my meetings with the top brass at the government levels, that was always made clear. Even Piyush Goyal and others have many times said that, if your principles of doing business are correct and true, then you have nothing to fear.
Sure.
And I think that's a very fair statement. For a long time, a lot of people were getting away with things which they shouldn't have. And I think the government has taken measures to bring those sort of groups or people to justice.
I just wanted to also touch upon, you had a spate of acquisitions in overseas markets as well over the last few years. So just, where are you seeing maximum growth? What's looking exciting? How much do you still kind of have to go and remain involved in sort of getting those businesses up and going, or are they now completely self-run?
Every business that we've started or even acquired, there's a lot of time, personal time that goes into it.
Sure.
We've got 2 acquisitions overseas and 1 in India. The Holland operation, which we acquired 7 years ago, is now finally turning a profit. It was making a loss of about 40 million euros. Now it's making a marginal profit, and it'll continue to grow. The Czech Republic operation also, we're trying to get that going. Every acquisition that we make, typically we've seen it takes 3 to 5 years to really turn around and make something out of it, because you have a lot of legacy issues that you want to sort out. And some of these companies we bought were belonging to the state government governments, and so to change all that, it takes some time. But these were strategic acquisitions made to enter into Europe and the United States, and also giving us access to technologies that we didn't have. For example, injectable polio vaccine is something that we make in Holland, and that is something that we are not allowed to handle in India.
Right.
If you've eradicated polio in India, you're not allowed to handle the wild virus, and that's why we had to find a country to make it where the regulatory framework allows that to happen.
Okay, all right. And in terms of what's perhaps helped to propel the growth in the last few years? Would you say it has been this attempt to expand in newer markets? Has it been a particular focus on certain drugs? What's really spurred growth?
I think the environment that the Modi government has created over here has been very good, and therefore we have invested, I would say 80% of our capacity, a new capacity in India itself, in the new campus, where we've spent close to $1 billion. Right here in India, because the opportunities, the cost of manufacturing, the human talent that still exists in India, we're a big believer in that, and it's paid off so far.
Okay.
So the challenges of running a company abroad are there. They have their strategic advantages, but India is always going to be the destination even for the next decade. Even when I go to places like Davos, where they discuss which countries are the right places where most investors are now looking at, India is far ahead in that. India and China is where everything is being produced, or even services. So nothing now really is being made in the US or Europe, very few things. So that's why we believe in that, and we're building capacity right here.
Amazing. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. Should we go over?
Great. Let's go.
So Adar, this lab looks brand new, but it's not, which is what you just told me. It looks spanking new, I mean, in mint condition.
You're absolutely right, Aabha. Actually, this is about 11 years old. We're making Hib conjugate vaccine over here.
Okay.
And this is just an example to show you the amount of infrastructure that one has to build and comply with and keep it refurbished and up to date. And this is causing a huge cost pressure. So as the costs are going up, due to regulation, both in India and with foreign inspectors. The pricing pressure is also coming down illogically, and we've been talking to the government to look at it in a way which is practical. Today they want a product coming out of this facility which has cost somewhere around $25–30 million. They want this product to come out at 5 and 6 rupees a dose, which you can't even get a cup of tea these days. So I've always joked with the health ministry officials and price control guys that the chai wala across the street on the road in Delhi was charging me 7.5 rupees because I checked that for a cup of tea. And they want a state-of-the-art GMP vaccine which will go into children for 5 rupees. And this is what we've been trying to discuss and educate the national pricing authorities. It remains such a controversial issue, so I'm glad you're addressing it. So they need to strike a balance between extortion prices, where multinationals and foreign companies have been exploiting the Indian public at, which is wrong. You look at the hepatitis vaccine, when we launched it, we brought it down by 10 times. It was being sold at $5 by GSK. You know, this is I'm going back 15 years ago now. And now we're selling it at 25–30 cents a dose. So it's substantially, so it's more than, it's 10 times, 15 times the reduction. Which is what has happened in most vaccines. And do you see that, do you see them listening? Do you see that pricing power? Well, we've got a dialogue going on now, let's see what happens. All right, fair enough. How much also do you invest in R&D in some of these facilities? Well, every year, you know, we have huge clinical trials and we spend on average about 800 crores a year on R&D, both in terms of developing new vaccines and also our budget for buying technology from the US and other places, including clinical trials. So roughly about 800 to 900 crores a year is what we spend on R&D, including clinical trials. And given that now you've invested in the acquisitions, you've invested in this, you know, huge facility, the new one here as well, you must have some, you know, substantial plans with regards to the kind of market size and the kind of growth that you foresee even from here on. No, I mean, we hope to double our turnover in the next 10 years, 5 years, sorry. Because the new products which we're hoping to launch in Europe and the United States should really add in terms of value, not in terms of volume and containers. Because, you know, there the prices are 10–15 times that of what we sell here. So we're looking forward to that, and of course also expanding in the emerging markets. This is awesome. Come have a seat. Wow, look at that. Like this is the kind of place you'd want for your office, wouldn't you? What a novel idea. Only you can do this. Who would have thought of, you know, trolleying an Airbus here, Adar? How did you come up with that? Well, you know, there was a chap who used to sell aircrafts in the UK, and he had a very small office which looked like an aircraft. So that's where I got the idea, and I said, in my new campus, because I have the space, wouldn't it be fun to have my new corporate office inside an aircraft? This is my personal office. Of course, we have main buildings too for all the staff. And this campus, I'm completely blown away. There's so much work going on currently, you know, which is why we of course haven't fully shot all of it on camera, because we can see all the development, but big plans. Well, yes, this campus took me about 5 years to construct. It's 45 acres in total. But what's more significant is that it will produce eventually about 600 million doses a year. This is mainly designed for European and US regulations, and that's where the investment is close to $1 billion, and we'll probably cross that in the near future. And it'll employ about 3,000 people over the next 3.5 years. That's amazing. Adar, where do you find this
the passion to really keep building on the legacy. You know, your father's created a, flagship business, and yet you're still trying to take it now to the next level in all that you do. You know, what's the driving force for you?
Well, as I said, in my foundation, it was just my passion of being able to help those less fortunate. And then apart from that, whenever I had some spare time, I started some new businesses. One that has taken off fairly well, and we started 6 months ago, is Poonawalla Finance, where we lend to salaried professionals and small businesses up to a limit of 30 lakhs on the upper side. And we've crossed almost about 1,200 crores there, where we want to stay away from the real estate and other riskier sectors where you saw NBFCs having trouble recovering funds from lending to big ticket. Big ticket lending is not what we want to get into. And we want to charge the right amount of interest, which is risk adjusted. So you don't end up, charging too little or too much and taking on the wrong kind of risk associated with it. And I think this is the right opportunity and time where, we've seen other NBFCs going out of the business and there's a liquidity crunch and people need funds to fulfill their dreams and passions. And I feel that we want to be able to, again, do something for the masses like we've done in SII and address the needs of the public.
Again, there's some kind of magic touch here, because just in a few months, you've crossed, I think, 1,500 crores.
No, 1,200, but there's no magic touch there, because in a finance company is the easiest to grow, because the product you're selling is money. In fact, the key in a finance company, as I've seen from my peers, is that you have to grow very slowly and carefully. I could have grown it to 5,000 crores. There's no end to it, because everybody needs money. So what we've set is some very disciplined rules in our own systems where we don't lend, to certain categories, certain geographies in India where it's hard to recover funds. So we're going very slowly and systematically. Finance companies can grow, at 200% a year also if you allow it. But that's not what we want to do. We want to build a good book slowly and see where that takes us.
And see where it goes. Okay, so you've got finance. Clean energy has become a very big initiative as well.
A spin-off from my philanthropic work, my Clean City initiative, where we're picking up waste with 250 trucks and machines. Now the wet waste is being processed, where hundreds of tons a day is being processed into energy, where we convert the methane from the wet waste, which goes to the CNG pumps, where your vehicles and buses today are powered by that, and therefore need that much less oil and fuel, which is the traditional energy form, which is not clean. And that dependence we want to reduce by using biogas from our plant over there for wet waste. And eventually we will convert also the garbage and waste to electricity, so that the dependence on coal power and nuclear power goes down. Where, this is something that everyone wants to do in the future, and we've got some good partners to do it. We've started it to a tune of about 100 tons a day. And we'll build from there.
So how do you find time for all of these multiple businesses? How are you managing to, stay on top of it all?
Well, it's difficult. It's but what I like to do is just plan my day where I allocate enough time. And I do what I can when I can. You can't really do everything at once and stress about it. And the good part is, if you do what you enjoy, then it's not really stress. It's something I look forward to, in fact, so that's the way I look at it.
And you said you would be open to perhaps taking the company public at some point if required. What would be the motivation for that?
Motivation would only be if I didn't have funds to expand, which we do right now, but also for major acquisitions. Because if we're talking of acquisitions of upwards of $1 billion, then naturally we don't have the cash reserves to do that. So only in those scenarios we would look at raising some funds and then combine that with going public to pay off, a debt or a fundraise from private equity. So that was looking likely about 4 or 5 years ago. But now that those acquisitions were not happening, and then we focused on smaller acquisitions, we did that internally.
There has been some talk about, murmurs, that the sort of hindrance with regards to people feeling that they're being over-vaccinated by large companies. Is there truth in that?
No, vaccine hesitancy is something even the West is battling with. You've seen measles cases and other outbreaks of diseases which have been eradicated from the planet are coming back.
Sure.
And this resurgence in even Washington, D.C. And that's because mothers and educated people feel, and they're questioning now today because of social media and fake news, that vaccines can cause autism or other side effects, which has completely been disproven by experts, and there's enough papers and talk. So we're trying to now counter that on social media and other platforms to again educate people and especially mothers that they're running a very high risk of not vaccinating children because of these rumors and leaving them unprotected.
Finally, Adar, I want to just talk or touch upon the kind of work you've done through the foundation and for the city of Pune, and the kind of job creation you're looking at, the kind of clean living that you're incorporating here, because I think it's really important for people to know how, how integrated the Poonawalla group is with the larger community.
No, so apart from our schools and our hospital, which we provide at a very low cost, the healthcare in our hospital is virtually free. We're planning to also have a free health insurance program coming about for the underprivileged. But more than that, what's already happening right now is the free clean drinking water that we're providing to the villages around. Millions of liters a day is being given through ATMs from the water that we process from the sewage in the rivers.
Sure.
So it's the river sewage water that's being converted and given. And of course our trucks and machines which are picking up the garbage and waste, which was also, creating a very bad image of India when foreigners come. What must they be thinking? That if we can't even address these sort of issues, why invest in a country like this? And that, bugged me, and I wanted to act, and it was high time that someone also rolled up their sleeves, and I encourage as many people to do it, because we can't keep complaining to the government on the sidelines. We have to also do what we can.
Sure.
And we've had such an overwhelming response. So many volunteers and people have joined us and made our initiative even much bigger than what I started 3 years ago. I think in our fortunate positions, when I see other second and third generation family business owners and wealthy individuals, I think the main thing that motivates me to address the next challenge or whatever it may be is to be able to make a difference in other people's lives for the better. Because for me, economic growth and financial growth is something which we have already achieved. And it's not something that drives us beyond a point. In fact, you have to control yourself and not be too greedy and then go into debt like a lot of groups have done. So that's one of the hardest things that my father always, in fact, tells me every day to slow down on, so that you don't make a mess somewhere. So whilst keeping that in perspective, one has to look at what difference you can make in other people's lives for the better. And that's where, I like to address certain challenges in whatever areas that we've spoken about to start with, including now. So educating people on family planning is something which we are taking seriously as the next challenge. Because if you look at India, what is the biggest problem is the population. If we had less people to cater to in terms of building toilets, jobs, clean drinking water, anything, traffic, public transport, everything is coming down to that one issue.
Sure.
So we have to try and balance that with the workforce also that we need to grow our economy. And that's something we're looking at, how to address that challenge in the right way.
Okay. Comes from the heart. Adar, thank you so much for joining
Pleasure
us on the show and for having us here. It's been a fabulous experience. Thank you.
Pleasure.